Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Yesterday, I covered an article about Bill Clinton, who made a statement and a kind of scenario. And I found scenarios I find them idiotic because I can create scenarios just like this if I want. Now, it's true that sometimes scenarios are created based on the facts and evidence that you have, and you are based on patterns, and then you can foresee, kind of approximate the future. But sometimes these scenarios are so far-fetched that make people just look like, really? How did you get this scenario from your... Yeah, I was about to say something, which I'll say maybe later. So anyway, this scenario was about former President Bill Clinton, who stated that he kind of regrets that he pushed somehow Ukraine into giving up its nuclear weapons in 1994 in a treaty with Russia, then Ukraine and United States. Therefore, if now is a scenario, maybe leaving the nuclear weapons in Ukraine at that time would have prevented Russia from invading Ukraine. Now, that's a scenario. Another scenario could have been that, let's say, Ukraine would have nuked Poland, for instance, because they don't like Poles. All right, let's go with that scenario, which I think is more probable than the one, or maybe just attack Russians because they don't like Russians either. But the thing is, the Russians could have retaliated because they had nuclear weapons too, but the Poles couldn't. So I think that Bill Clinton's scenario is BS. Now, at that time, and I have to express my ignorance on this matter, and I'm not ashamed of it because now I learned, and now I won't be ignorant on the issue. And what am I talking about? I knew that there were many nuclear weapons on the territory of the Soviet Union in 1991, and I was unaware. I mean, I never thought of, but now that I think it made sense, I didn't know that actually Belarus had a lot of nuclear weapons as well. So then Lukashenko would have had nuclear weapons as well. So then that complicates Bill Clinton's idiotic scenario. And obviously what would have Lukashenko have done with his nuclear weapons just makes me wonder. Again, Poland would be the first target, and Lithuania for having a big mouth for its 2.5 million people population. All right, so I have two articles here, one from yesterday regarding Bill Clinton, and the other one telling us how many nukes Belarus had, and they agreed to give it up, give all its arsenal to Russia. Again, was that Bill Clinton's fault, or whose fault that was? We're going to find out. So let's go first to this little article, which, as I said, comes from yesterday. There you have it. It's from Business Insider. Bill Clinton says he feels, and I'm quoting, terrible for pushing a 1994 agreement with Russia that resulted in Ukraine giving up its nuclear weapons. And down here it says, Clinton said that if Ukraine still had the weapons, Russia would not have invaded. Well, but you talk about from 1994 to 2002. A lot of things could have happened then, okay? So I'm not surprised that Clinton is so shallow in his assessments, because after all, he's a politician. Now let's go to the other article here, which is more important than the first one. I just found it today, April 7, 2023. From the Kiev Independent, Belarus Weekly, Russia likely delivering missiles to Belarus. Lukashenko asks for strategic nukes. Now, I am 99.9% certain that Russia will be delivering missiles, nuclear missiles to Belarus under its control, obviously not under Lukashenko's control. And if the Americans don't do anything in the meantime, which is stop the war from their side. So let's go back here. It says here, 5 years after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Belarus went from having the world's 8th largest stockpile of nuclear weapons to becoming an entirely non-nuclear state. Now, I did not know that. Now we know. As part of the USSR, Belarus had 1,120 warheads. That is, I know, ahead of Great Britain, I know ahead of France, ahead of Israel, ahead of Pakistan. I think it's just United States and Russia would have had at this point. I don't know how many Ukraine had at that point, but 1,120 warheads is more than I know everything. I don't know China, where China is 600 nukes or something. I don't even have it. So probably right now Belarus would be on the third place, in the third place. I don't know where Ukraine was. Distributed between air defense forces, air forces and ground forces. The country's territory also hosted 2 missile silo complexes capable of storing intermediate-range ballistic missiles. At least 33 locations in Belarus were designated for repairing, storing, or deploying Soviet nuclear weapons. Belarus first announced its intention to revoke its nuclear arsenal in 1990 in its declaration of independence from the USSR. So they didn't have to be convinced. They said, well, we are done with that. In 1993, Belarus officially became a signatory of the Treaty of Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, thus becoming the first post-Soviet republic to reject the nuclear weapons it had inherited after the collapse of the Soviet Union. So remember, compare that with Ukraine, which had to be pushed. Okay? All right, now, the UK, the US, and Russia guaranteed Belarus security assurances as part of the Budapest Memorandum signed on December 5, 1994, exactly as this one. These guys are talking about the same thing here. On November 27, 1996, the last train carrying RS-12M Topol ICBMs was dispatched from a town in Belarus, Hrodna Oblast, to Russia. Belarus sought and achieved its non-nuclear status during its brief democratic period. All right, well, it's okay. Ukraine was democratic after 1994 coup d'etat. So here we have this little misunderstanding, if I can call it that way. And I like it because Lukashenko did not cry for those. And neither, I don't remember Zelensky mentioning them, but we have Mr. Bill Clinton who regrets it. He feels terrible about it. Well, what can I say? So I learned something today, and I'm always eager to do so. And I hope you learned something from this 1,100 and whatever 20-some warheads Belarus had. And I guarantee you, as I said, 99.9% that Belarus will have nuclear weapons, Russian nuclear weapons, on its territory under Russian control. And the Russians will not do anything but mirror at a very small scale what the good country of the United States of America has been doing for some time. Remember, I think they have in Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, Italy, nuclear weapons. So if these guys are going to have it in Belarus, hey, it's 1 out of 5 countries with 6 locations. That's what the United States has. 5 countries in Europe, 6 locations with nuclear warheads. And now they're all crying that Belarus is going to have, I don't know how many locations, 1 country. Well, that tells you how the United States sees everybody else as an equal. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.